Welcome.
See, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
See, when you're at home, there is no tech person. And so, like, I knew something was going to go wrong. I knew it. It has been that day. So, anyway, but I'm here. Yay. Thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely. Oh, we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the idea to join using my phone, because that completely works. And I don't know what's wrong with the computer, but it works as a great backdrop to hold the phone. So,
Oh, great. Hey, I've done that before for sure. So I talked about how I met you, that, Michelle reached out to me and that I fell in love and that I got your book and then we spoke and we've done a podcast, haven't we? Yeah, we have. And so now you're joining us for book club, and thank you so much. And we have some loyal book club people, excuse me, on, and we're all excited about discussing this. We've had a little bit of discussion. Anna, who's up in the corner.
Okay.
Anna is from Canada, and you want go ahead, Anna, and say what you were saying.
I just wanted to say how impressed I was at telling your story. You never once mentioned the name. You didn't go to the media. You had the grade 8s wanted to have the conversation, and you had them talk, and you asked them not to mention the name. And reading your book the whole time, I'm engaged. The work I do is to interrupt young people on a pathway to violence. And so I was completely engaged in the whole thing. And the fact that at the end, I still don't need to know the name of that child. What I need to know is how to be there for any of the children that we have coming to us that are on that pathway, that are empty vessels. And so I just wanted you to know that your messaging, and it's your story, and being very clear that it's not his story, and allowing us to know that the journeys that each of us have are different. And just before you came on, I was listening to Alexa's and Scarlett about prayer, but did you ever read the book God Winks?
So I've never read it.
So your story, when you go back and say, this is what happened, that's God winking, and he kept winking. And then when that moment came, you were prepared. So when I met Scarlett through Safe Schools, that was a wink for me to try and choose love, right? And then you went to the Safe Schools, and that found, so there's all these little winks that bring us together. So I just wanted to bring God winks in here, because he winked all the way through your story.
He really did. And I share with Scarlett, and she probably maybe has already told you, for me, when this incident happened, sitting in the very midst of it happening, and I think I mentioned this in the book, I thought, I can't believe it happened, all these years. And I kind of felt like Noah, and I was building an ark, and nobody had ever seen it rain, and people were talking about a crisis plan. And I just felt in my heart like a crisis plan is when you're in the midst of something happening. And yes, that's important, but can we find these children before they get to that point? And so sitting in the midst of this, when that started happening, I just thought, wow, Lord, for such a time as that, I can't believe this is it. And I still, even now, it's been over 5 years, and I still think about that. And like you mentioned, all these little things that led up to that, and how still every single day, God's winking for me at school still. I still have the same job. I still work out of the same office, same school. And today I got to speak to a group of 5th graders. They are studying the Congressional Medal of Honor's character development program. So they're learning about character traits. And so Mr. Odom, who is the 5th grade teacher who teaches this, he invited me to come in and speak to them. And so they've been learning this week about the citizens' honors. And so he tells them all, we have, somebody who's going to come in to talk about who's a citizen. The kids are all like, well, hey, Miss Hudgens, we have this special speaker today, and they don't even know it's me, which is the best part of all of it, is that we were able, by being able to see into families because of the media after incidents in their towns. I knew that staying out of the media was the only way for us to get back to normal as soon as possible, and also for us to avoid the potential that someone else could say, hey, you know, this kid didn't set out to do what he did intentionally, so I'm going to go there and finish that. I had a lot of concern about the school and the kids, and of course our, you know, families being so. There were just so many ways that God revealed that in the years leading up to it, through a lot of the books that I read, where people just talked about their negative experiences with the media. And so I learned quickly that I didn't have to tell them anything. And I still tell people all the time, if something else traumatic happened to me tomorrow, I would make a YouTube video and post it, because I don't need the media to tell my story. The American people are smart enough to listen to someone tell something and understand, you know, what they have heard. And so when I look back on all of that, I just think, you're exactly right. I mean, God he showed himself and revealed himself in so many ways. And even today, you know, with the kids, I just thought, I'm still supposed to be here. And there's going to be some kid here at our school still who's struggling, who's going to come and need something. It may not be obviously of this grand of scale, but maybe I can help them. So I'm so grateful there are people like you who are doing that in your communities, because as you well know, there's such a shortage of mental health people right now, and we need them desperately. So keep doing that. And thank you for sharing what you did.
So Anna, didn't you also say that one of the kids that you work with is studying Columbine and Sandy Hook and those shootings, and that's definitely not a good sign.
Right. Well, and I think that when you're looking at kids in general, we really do have to train teachers how to look for certain things that are alarming, because believe it or not, even though we live in the times that we do, there are still people who might read an essay in their English class, or a child might comment that disturbs the teacher a little bit, but it's not something they ever pass to someone else. And when I look back at the history of violent offenders in schools, there were always some kind of warning signs. I have never yet read of one where there wasn't some piece of something that someone knew. And so that's one of the reasons that I say I'll never leave middle school, because I believe that past 8th grade, kids start to really recognize behaviors that other people perceive as being taboo, and they start to try to hide those things. You know, I want them to come in and say, Miss Hudgens, I think I'm seeing things, or I think I'm hearing voice. I want them to come and tell me that, because then I can say very calmly, all right, we're going to figure out how to help you. You know, I can not overreact, but I can also understand the severity of the situation and talk with their parents and hope get the right mental health intervention going for them. But a lot of times people don't recognize when those things are happening with students. They really dismiss it, or they just think, oh, it's probably not that big of a deal. Maybe I'm just overreacting. So it took me a lot of years to train our staff. I don't care if you think you're overreacting. Come tell me anyway. Let's look at the situation, figure out what's going on, because some kids are truly interested in studying violence. Others are looking to copy it. So, you know, if I had a student, I think, who was researching mass shootings, I probably would bring them in and talk to them about their interest. Some of them, again, they may be looking to work in law enforcement, or they have heart for prevention. They want to know more about that. But a lot of times that's definitely a red flag for a concern.
Yeah, I mean, with the pandemic, I mean, obviously there was no school violence during the pandemic, and that was nice.
Yeah.
But nobody was in school. And so I knew when we came back that we would start seeing it again. And we did. You were the only other person in the entire world still, by the way, that has ever said, other than me, that every school shooting is 100% preventable. And I thought that was amazing. You said with one word, hope. And I think that that's the truth.
Right. Well, and for a long time, and still, I feel like a lot of people who are not educated in this field think that mass shootings of any nature, mass killings of any nature, are about homicide. And they don't understand that when you have someone who wants to commit murder on that type of scale, they are suicidal first. They are planning to not survive that incident. So in my mind, it was not, let's set out to look for a person who's homicidal. It's let's take care of the people who feel suicidal or who are exhibiting suicidal ideation, or just, making comments about that. Because if we can find those people and intervene, we are most likely able to prevent mass killings. And I don't have like ways to validate or prove that is true. That has just been my mindset from the time that I started reading about this. Especially when you look at, I know you all probably are familiar with Dr. Peter Langman's work, and you look at how school shooters are coming from a lot of times a psychosis or a traumatized situation, sometimes psychopathy, not very often, but sometimes, and we have to figure out how can we intervene to help them. And the younger they are, the better. And so, middle school for me is the perfect time for us to recognize when kids are struggling. And, just this weekend, I had a young woman on Friday night email me, and I had already gone to bed, but I woke up, saw I had these emails, and realized that these emails to me were a goodbye message. And so I called the police immediately and sent someone to her home, and, met with her first thing the next morning and said, I'm not going to let go. The one statistic I'm proud of about my school is we are the only school in our county, middle or high school, that's never had a suicide. And I believe that's how you prevent mass violence. But I also believe it's how we protect every individual one of our own. I mean, we know, the Bible talks about the Lord would let, the shepherd would leave all the sheep to go find one that's missing. So my goal is to try to figure out who those kids are and step in and intervene. And if they trust you, if they develop trust in you, they will tell you things, even if they think that you might be disappointed or hurt or shocked by it. They'll still, tread out and say, I think I don't want to live anymore, or I think I want to hurt someone. And again, then you have the perfect opportunity to work with them to intervene. So that's what I pray for, is just don't let me miss one, Lord. Don't let me miss one. That's all that, I guess one of the questions I've gotten asked about this book is, how many kids do you think that, you saved in your career as a counselor? And I'm like, I don't have a clue, and I don't care. Like, maybe one day on the shores of heaven, I'll get to meet them all. That's the case. I'll have an eternity to do that. But in the meantime, my goal is, most important statistic I care about is that number stay zero, that we not lose any kids at their own hand or the hand of anyone else. And that's a big fight, but I'm in it. I'm in it, and I'm pretty dogged about it. So it's important for everyone who works with kids to know there is a reason every single time having that encounter with that child. Even when you feel frustrated or you have a line of kids outside the door, I try to tell myself there's a reason this kid is sitting here right now. There's a reason the other one, I couldn't get their teacher on the phone to get them out of class, but this kid has popped in the door. So there's a reason for this. And so, like I said, that's my prayer every day. Just don't let me miss anybody. Don't let me miss anybody.
What do you think we're doing wrong with suicide prevention, Molly? Because I agree with you. I know that Adam Lanza was suicidal. All the ones that I know, including the guy, TJ Stevens, who was the school shooter in 1982. We just did a podcast together. He was also suicidal, and said he heard voices in his head, and that prompted him to do that the following day. But where are we going wrong? Because we know that childhood suicide has increased, doubled in rate in this decade than it was. And we're seeing kids kill themselves younger and younger. And we have suicide prevention. Every kid goes through it. And we have all suicide walks and all this awareness, and we're slashing the stigma and all of that. Yet suicides continue to rise. Where are we going wrong?
Well, part of it is that that we have to train the kids to recognize signs and symptoms of that. I do every year when we do an introductory lesson, I talk to them about, if you ever hear somebody say these things, and I go through, I don't want to live anymore, I want to die, it'd be better if I wasn't alive, nobody would care if I was dead. I train the kids, if you hear something like that, will say things like that sometimes to peers, not even necessarily friends. They may say it out loud in class, they may say it in the hallway, they may say it in a joking manner when it obviously is not funny and nobody else thinks it's funny. But I want, they will say that to kids, but maybe not necessarily to adults. And so I think that part of it is we have to train. We spend a lot of time training. All of our adults go through suicide prevention training with the Jason Foundation, but we don't necessarily train the kids specifically in the same things that we are doing. And I don't necessarily know that curriculum is the best one to use for children, but I think that it's a topic where you have to be willing to have that conversation. And of course, every time that you do that, you also know that you are then bringing in, there's going to be an onslaught of kids where for a couple weeks, everything they hear, they're going to be concerned about a friend or, even themselves. And you have to kind of prepare yourself for that when you do a lesson like that. But that's one of the places I think we're going wrong, is that we don't necessarily train the kids. I think that too, you have to remember we have a greater population. We also track these things more than we used to, so we have a lot better data than we did. I do think there's definitely been an increase since the pandemic. Feeling, hopeless. Is there some reason so that these kids are thinking that this is a choice? Another thing is the harsh reality that a lot of kids don't understand the permanent nature of a decision like this. They have this concept of resting in peace, and they don't understand that they're making a decision that they cannot change. A lot of them are just their mind. We know that the male brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25, and so you're looking at how some of these kids are like, they're making these decisions that obviously they shouldn't, but they don't have enough life experience to even really understand the finality of death. Yeah. A lot of them, maybe they've had a pet die, but it's really in middle school that for a lot of kids, we see their first experience with death, and that's usually the loss. They really don't understand that. And I of course, am going to always blame a lot of the things that they're exposed to. That when they can watch things that are so horrific in nature that any of us would cringe to see it, and they just don't even change expression because they're conditioned to it, we understand that they don't really know the value of life. They don't really understand how important every life is. And after a while, they don't even understand the importance of their own. So there's a lot of problem. And of course, I have, I believe too, that a lot of people are lost because they don't have something to believe in. And, for us, we've shared this before, when you have a foundation of faith, you have something that is always supporting you. But a lot of people and children do not have that. And when the people around you fail and disappoint you, and the things that you were hoping to be successful in school or sports or whatever disappoint you, if you don't have something to fall back on that is a solid constant and a real foundation, you're going to falter. And so I have thought a lot. There are kids sometimes that I come in and they leave, and I just pray about it. Lord, just protect him. He needs you. He needs to find, some type of belief system because he's lost. And so,
That's what you said. Yeah.
There's a what you're trying to do is a huge piece of it.
Well, yeah, for me, everything comes back to self-awareness, social and emotional intelligence, coping skills, essential life skills, the ability to be present and think about what you're thinking about, and the locus of control, I think, is such an important part of this. When you talk about feeling hope, And when you don't feel like you have any control in your life, you feel helpless and hopeless. That leads to anger. And there are things that you can do to bring that back inside so that you think that that you make things happen and you take personal responsibility for what happens in your life instead of blaming and fault finding and finger pointing and being a victim, which is helpless, hopeless.
Right.
And yeah, so yeah, we're on the same page with that.
Well, and a lot of people, I just turned 45 this year, and a lot of people of my generation who are still at my school, we've got a group of pretty seasoned staff, and there are probably 15 that are about the same age. And we have joked about and talked about seriously how kids just aren't as tough. You know, we were raised a little rougher. You know, you were roughed up physically a little more. You were you just weren't, you didn't cower. If you were really hurt about something, you came back at somebody and you said that, you know, you reacted differently. And so one of the challenges I face is, how do we teach kids to not always be so vulnerable? How do we teach them to stand up for themselves, to be brave and to exert that? And sometimes, you know, I met with a girl this week, of her with us talking about this, but I talked to her about, she was upset. This was a boy situation, and he had broken up with her, and he was cheating on her with this, you know, this other girl, and she's just a crying. And I said to her, honey, now when are you gonna get mad? Like, you need to get mad about it. So I feel like we had a good conversation about, yes, you can cry, be sad about this. Certainly you can experience that emotion, but at some point you need to realize this wasn't your fault. You did not make this choice for him. He made it. So that's okay if that makes you angry. So sometimes I think we have to teach them how to be stronger, because we know that the world is changing, and it is much tougher to face than when we were growing up. If I did something silly when I was in middle school, then only the people who were in my vicinity who saw it were affected by it.
Right.
Or might make fun of me about it later. But now you do something silly in middle school, somebody is video recording it, they're going to upload it, post it on Snapchat, Instagram, whatever, and then now you have to live with it the rest of your life. So there's no margin of error anymore for kids. And we had that, you know, we had chances to make mistakes that weren't on a grand scale, and they don't. So that's a tough thing to fight too. But we have to try to keep adapting and figuring out, as these new challenges come up, how we can help those kids face it. And there have been some kids that I have said, you need to get off social media. This is not positive for you at all. Every interaction experience you're having, that you're coming to me and you're struggling, it's because of something that's been posted or said about you online. If you don't have this social media conduit, you're not going to have that, you know. So some kids, we have to, you know, every one of them is different, and we have to look at their individual situation and try to figure out how we can empower them when they are struggling and when they're facing something new. And the hardest part about it is, we are learning all this too. We're learning it as we go, because we didn't have these we didn't have to deal with media. We didn't have to deal with cell phones and social media, you know. And so we're having to learn it in order to try to help them. And that's tough. It's tough.
Molly, I just loved, it was your story is so inspiring. I'm very religious and rely on my faith on, you know, in a lot of different situations. And, you know, I loved how you paralleled your story, you know, along with his, and got insight into you as a person too. And as Anna said, it wasn't just all about him, but it was also about your journey along the way and how you kind of found yourself. On one of the, in your book you had written, you were telling the story and how, you know, you were in beauty pageants.
Oh yes.
And you said here that you always, you didn't think you were pretty enough or thin enough, kind of what maybe some of the kids that you're counseling are going through right now. And then you said, I had believed those negative things over and over in my life so many times, but I had been enough. God had made me enough through no doing of my own. He had given me what I needed to be enough in that situation. I had never felt more special in my life. And I'm just wondering, you know, going through what you went through and even now, how do you keep that going? How do you keep it going? Because you've been through on the other side where I wasn't enough, I'm not enough. And now you see that God had this revelation in you. How do you keep that strength of your faith, knowing that I am strong enough. I can move forward. I can help others. Where do you get that fortitude?
Well, I will be very honest with you, extremely vulnerably honest, and say that that is something I fight every single day. I still think that is my weakness. I think Satan knows that. I think he hones in on that. There are days that I still, I sit down in front of a kid and I think, how am I even, there is no way that I even can help this child. Like, I'm not, I am just a 45-year-old woman who lives in, rural Tennessee, and I'm not anything important. So I have to fight that every single day. But I also think that being in that position makes me real. I tell people all the time, I go places, and Scarlett can attest to this. Like, you go places, you give these speeches, and people think you're just the greatest thing. And I always think when it's over, I'm like, Lord, they just don't even know. I mean, look at me. I'm wearing Friday like it's an old coat, and it's Tuesday. I could not be more. And I don't plan any speech I give. I don't practice anything I say, because I just believe God's going to tell me what I'm supposed to say. And so there are times that I am meeting with a kid sitting right in front of me, and I'm just praying, Lord, I don't know what to say. Like, give me the words. Just help me know what it is you want me to say here. And I am very blessed. I wrote about my Knights of the Round Table. Those women are still. Kara wrote the foreword for the book, is my very best friend. She lives in Oklahoma. I talk to her every single day. I talk to her in the middle of the day once today. And we laugh about, when you have a counseling degree, you can say, I think I'm enmeshed. Like, I think we're codependent, but we know that. So I think that's a good thing. But sometimes I'll call her. I will call her. I talk to my husband about it. I have this very close knit group of friends that were my friends before this happened, before there was any notoriety at all. And they are still those same people that keep me grounded. But I think part of it is just, I have to prayerfully say every day, all right, Lord, just, help me be where I'm supposed to be. Help me say what you want me to say. Help me to not say what I'm not supposed to say. And so it is still a fight for me. The necklace that I had on that day that I talk about in the book that said, I'm enough, I donated it to a museum in Chattanooga. There's the Charles H. Coolidge Center that I think I talked about that in the book as well. And they have that necklace. So I bought another one to replace it, and I wear it some. But I tend to, it's funny because I have on a necklace tonight that has a thistle on it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but we live on a farm, and I learned that thistles are one of the hardiest plants in the world. There's not many things that will kill a thistle, much to the chagrin of most farmers. So I wear this a lot too, to just remind me that I'm stronger than I am. And so I think that I need visual reminders, so I wear that. I also know every day going into whatever I am doing that it is, I'm not supposed to be here. I am living on borrowed time. And when you have something like that happen to you, or you really realize, this should have been the 5th anniversary of my death, and I'm still here. You really look at the people who to me are the heroes. And Scarlett may have shared with you all, but the 6 educators from Sandy Hook are all posthumous recipients of the Citizen's Honor. And we have since then added, several others. I think I talked about my bracelet, but I wear this every day. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but it has the names of all of the Citizen Honor recipients, both students and teachers who died in schools. I wear it all the time. I only take it off sleeping in the shower, but that gives me a lot of strength. There's times during the day I just touch it and I just think about, them and what, I wasn't that brave. I mean, I was not brave enough to face down something like that. My situation was very different. So I look for pieces like that, and we are pretty faithful churchgoers. My husband's a deacon. I'm one of the treasurers at church. So we're those people that go Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. We're always there. And that also fills my cup over and over. It never fails on the days that are the hardest, that I'll go to church. Usually it's a Wednesday night, and I'm just thinking, just get me through 2 more days, Lord, just get me through the rest of the week. And our pastor, Dwayne, will speak on something that I'm just thinking, that is for me. Like, I don't know who else he got that whole sermon. It's all just for me. And so it is a daily fight. It's a daily process. And I'm not ashamed to say that, I think that part of the way we help other people is we let them see our weaknesses. It's hopefully it strengthens them by doing that. Strengthens me some by telling you all about it. It's kind of freeing. It's like I don't have to be perfect. I came in here and dusted, but I got on because I want to see all the dirt on the shelf by me. But it's like a reminder that you don't care about what dirt's on my shelf. That's not why you're here. It's just a reminder that most of the things in life that we spend a whole lot of time worried about, nobody really cares about. It's what we're doing to help other people. And if I can every day put people, the joy comes from that. It's the times that I try to push something or make something happen or do something that's outside of where I'm supposed to be, that I realize, hey, I need to take a step back, let God take over. And it's so much better when that happens. It really is. So thank you for asking about that. I love talking about my faith, and this is still a journey. Yeah. And it's taking me all over the country. But it also takes me to bus duty every morning. So that keeps me humble too.
Alexis, do you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I also highlighted about your angel story, and I just thought it was so remarkable. And I don't know, it's crazy when you look back at little things in your life and like how that impacts you to today. So I thought if you wanted to share a little bit about that experience and how you think back to that now and how it helped you during that day.
Right. Okay. So when that happened to me, it was my freshman year of college, first semester. I had graduated third in my class in high school, but I'm in my first semester of college. And my grade point average is like a 1.5. And I have never missed a class. I'm going all the time, but I just can't pass. I think I was in culture shock. I graduated with 12 people. There were maybe 75 people in my entire high school, small Christian school. And then I head off to, Western Kentucky, which was not huge, but at the time had probably 17,000 people. I might as well have been in another country. I mean, speaking a different language, because I was lost. And there were more people in my classes than had been in my whole school for the most part. And so I look back on that and I think about how I loved people and I was kind to people, but there were people who'd had so many life experiences so different from my own that I couldn't even grasp what that meant, And so on this particular day, I made a 45 on that test. I can still remember it. Like it was, I probably still have it, to be honest, because I keep everything. But I just remember like walking over and it was definitely a crossroads. I didn't know that at the time, but I sat down outside of my health class and I'm crying my eyes out. And I just prayed, I said, Lord, I think I'm going to go home. Like I'm going to lose my scholarship. I can't stay. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I thought I was supposed to be a teacher. I thought this was the plan, but maybe it's not. And of course, at the same time, I'm thinking about disappointing my parents. I'm thinking about what am I going to do? Because they're not going to let me just sit home. Like I'm going to have to get a job, but what am I even going to do? What am I good at? I have no idea. And then this person coming by, this guy, and me being, I'm still basically a teenage girl. I'm, 18 years old and I've got tear stained face. And here comes this guy who's pretty cute guy, as best, I could remember, and stopped and spoke to me. And, and I still, every time at school, I see a kid crying in the hallway, I'm like stopping to talk to that kid. It's like, you back to that. But I didn't until later. I didn't even tell a whole lot of people about that at first because I really thought nobody would ever believe me. But do you know that chapter of the book is the one I get asked or told about the most? You would not believe how many people have had angel intervention or what they perceive as that. And I've even said, maybe I just never saw the guy again. I don't know for sure. But for me, that really exemplified that verse in Hebrews and really made me, I saw it as such a correlation that, you ask for help and boom, you get it. Like, somebody sits down right there. And since then, I have had that happen over and over and over where I think to myself, if you ever get the chance, Molly, you need to be that person for somebody else. And, flights are the thing. Jason has this joke about this. He's like, if Molly ever makes it on a flight and doesn't talk to somebody the whole way home, I'll give her $100. Because I'm exhausted because I've been speaking somewhere for 3 days, and then I get on this flight and I can't help it. I got to talk to whoever's beside me. But there have been so many times that whoever that person was, like, they just needed somebody to talk to. And I, I've never met a stranger, I guess, but that gives me the opportunity to play that role some. And I don't think any of them have ever gotten off the plane and thought I was an angel. But, it reminds me that we can choose that route. We can choose to be that person. And it is very, well, now I have this belief that every single person I encounter in any way, shape, or form in which I make eye contact, there is a reason that interaction is supposed to happen. So I never get on an elevator and don't speak to somebody. I never don't speak to somebody on a plane. Kids, oh my goodness. Like, if I get on a plane and there's a kid somewhere and you can tell the parents are like, nobody's going to want to sit with me, I'm like, I'm sitting by that kid. Because they, I don't know. They fill my cup a lot too. But yeah, the angel, I wish I could say that I found that guy again. I have thought to myself, maybe somehow this person will read this book and call me and be like, hey, Molly, I'm that guy. Because that would be such a great thing to happen. But no, that has not happened yet. So I guess I'll just hang it there to see what comes along. But the angels definitely, they're still, I mean, of course, now my office feels like holy grounds. Like, I feel like I am, but it's changed a lot. And I don't know if I didn't write about this in the book because it happened at the time, but they are building a new Medal of Honor museum in Arlington, Texas. It's going to be the National Medal of Honor Museum. And they contacted me, I guess it's been 2 years ago in October, and asked me if I had anything left from my office in its original state when this happened. I guess they were of the assumption that I had, like, cleaned the room out or started over or something. Well, I didn't. I still have the same desk with 3 legs, and it had been there since 1977. And so, like, I had all of this stuff. And so I had taken pictures that day because the police didn't, and I thought there needed to be crime scene pictures. Anyway, now I know why the Lord had me do that, because they're using those pictures to recreate my office in Texas. So they took all of it, and this just happened this past year. So everything that was in the corner of the room where that happened, down to my diplomas and race medals and my stapler, my trash cans, all of it is going to be in the museum, and we're going to set it up to look exactly like my office did at school. And so when all of that stuff was taken out of the room and I had to change it, to fill it back in, I realized how cathartic that was for me to let go of that. But in the process of doing that, it's like everything that was in that room, because I donated every little willow tree angel
Yeah.
and going through all those things, it just reminded me, and I was alone in the room that day, but I had all these things around me that were like, when I look back on it, it was like this elephant from my Aunt Judy. So, like, my Aunt Judy was with me, and then I had, these willow tree angels that kids had given me. And it's like those kids were with me, and the pictures of my family. So I had all these things surrounding me where the Lord gave me all these little visual pieces that day that I was being protected. And of course, me feeling like there was somebody there, that is still something I think about. So that office is like a sanctuary now, and we laugh about it. People come there every single day to eat, and I treat them like they are coming for Thanksgiving dinner. If you come to the counseling department at my school, you eat on the spode china. Nobody uses paper plates, because we're not saving the good dishes for another day, because we might not have it. So you come in and I'll pop you some popcorn. We'll cook something, whatever. But I don't know. I just think that if we look for those chances to be those angels for people, I think we'll be surprised at how often that will present itself. And I love loving others. I think it's just, I don't know, it's one of my favorite parts of my job. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that. It's like, you never know, like those little moments that might just make a huge difference in a day, in a month, and with anything that they may be going through. Like, that's, especially in middle school, I feel like this is such a tough, awkward time, and having someone just there and open and ready to be there for you is just amazing. So I'm sure you're an angel to everyone in your school.
Well, I don't know about that. They blessed me a lot more than I think I blessed them. But I've learned through, I think this gave me permission to be a little unorthodox in some of the things that I do. And so sometimes kids come in and we cook. I have a I have a 2 burner like little stove that I have to hide when the fire marshal comes. But like sometimes I'm like, come on, we're gonna cook something. Because I think about the conversations you have with your grandmother or your mom or your aunt or somebody when you're preparing food or when you're doing dishes. And so sometimes like I said, we eat on the china and we don't have a dishwasher. So I wash dishes multiple times during the day. So sometimes I drag the kid out of my office and they stand there and talk to me while I wash stuff. Sometimes they dry it. Like it's funny how kids don't have opportunities like that. And because we live in such a rural area, there are some kids that, have never eaten on anything that's not a wrapper or, coming from a fast food place. So I try to look for little ways to make them feel really special when they come in. And of course, when they took everything out of my office, we got a lot of things donated. So now instead of it looking like an office, it's like somebody's living room, like there's a couch and a space lounge and we sit on the furniture when we meet. And so it surprised me how it didn't have school or it didn't have to look like an office. We could make it more home. And often the kids comment on that, like Miss Hudgens, we like the lamps or like there's something they'll say. And so it's just a precious place. I hope I never have to leave, but I think Frank DeAngelis, who was the principal at Columbine, is kind of the one who gave me permission to stay. Because when I met Frank, I told him, how people were so surprised that I was still at my school. And I knew that he had stayed at Columbine for 14 years after the shooting. And he talked to me about that a little bit and what a blessing that had been and how he got to be part of the community coming together and soldiering through especially those first few years that were so difficult. And I just thought, I don't have to leave. Because I think a lot of people were like, oh, you should become a professional speaker. I'm like, I'm not a professional. I'm a middle school counselor. Like, if I speak well, then great. But like, this is my job. Heeks is the one who kind of made me feel like you don't ever have to leave. And so I'm hoping they will let me stay there until I retire. I can retire in about 8 years, but because our youngest son is only in 3rd grade, it'll probably be more like 15. So I'm just hoping they'll let me stay for the duration because it's all I've been there since I was 21. It's the only job I've ever had. So, real job. So anyway.
And that's about 25 years, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm at 23 now. So okay. I've been there. Yeah. My 23rd year now. So yeah. I don't know. And I always say that I will leave when I realize I've lost my with itness and I don't connect with kids anymore. Nobody's going to have to tell me. I think I'll know. And that's when I'll leave. So until then, I just, unless they fire me or move me or, or the Lord opens something else that I'm supposed to do. But right now it just feels like the right place to be. And the kids are, they're not perfect. We had a fight today. We have issues all the time. And it is no different than any other school. It's just that we're pretty committed to keeping them alive. Like I say all the time, their safety has to be number one. And then after their safety, like we're going to take care of making sure they're safe. Then we're going to take care of their mental health. And then when we're finished with those 2 things, we're going to educate them because we can't teach them anything if the first 2 pieces are not in place. So we've preached that for a long time. And fortunately our staff bought in and they get that. So we have, I don't get friction from anyone. If I call and say I need to talk to Johnny, they send the kid to me. They don't question unless he's in the middle of a test or something like that. They don't question me about it. He gets to come down right away, which is what happened with the young man in our story. The teacher immediately, he went to the teacher and said, I need to talk to Miss Hudgens. And he called me and I didn't answer the phone, but he said, Molly, something about how insistent he was. He said, I just told him he was a good kid. He was about to be inducted into the junior beta the next week. So he said, I just told him, go on down there. If she's not down there, just come back, but because she may just have stepped out for a minute. And sure enough, we just weren't in there, I guess, when he called. And so I think about how if he had not let him come down, how very different this might have been.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. I love how you connect with them. And I think that's one of the issues too. And that you're like one-on-one with them, and you bring them into that, familiar setting, almost like you are family with them. Sometimes, I
yeah.
mean, when I
Oh
went
yeah.
to school, you go to the guidance counselors, and they were always just, it was so like, I don't want to say medicinal, but it was always just so stark. So when you were like, I got to talk to you, I don't know. It was just so, the setting wasn't conducive to talking. And I think the way you approach it is so, it comes from your heart, and to bring these kids in and get them to open up and share their feelings. And I think that's what we need more of, so kids do feel comfortable, because that's a hard space, is really going and talking to somebody and letting your emotionally, out there and mentally out there. And like you said,
Yeah.
sometimes even us, we're afraid sometimes to do that, and the stigma around it. And I feel like that's your calling. You are really, God is calling you and giving you the means and the way of doing it, and connecting with these kids that need it so much.
Mhm.
Well, and I think that a lot, for a long time, I'm not sure exactly what all roles you all play, but I know with mental health and with counseling, like I can remember learning in one of my graduate classes, of course, this is, in 2000, but, don't cry in front of a child. Like you should. And I'm like, forget that. I cry all the time with, they cry, I cry, because I feel like they need to understand that I really care. Like I'm really buying into whatever is going on with them. And so some of those things that I used to try to follow, because I guess I thought they were best practice, I kind of threw out the window and said, I'm going with instinct on this. And sometimes, I tell them, they'll come in, I'll say, listen, I'm having a rough day. How's your day going? And they're like, you are, Miss Hudgens, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, the printer wouldn't work. Like, I just tell them, the printer won't work. And I'm getting evaluated today, and I have to do lunch duty. And they're like, man, Miss Hudgens, lunch duty's the work. Like, and sometimes I laugh and I'm like, you know what? You're counseling me, honey. I'm so glad you're here today. So I don't know. I know that I'm different, and I probably will never be one of those people that is like the National School Counselor of the Year, because I don't feel like I have to do all those programs and processes. I don't need anything else hung on the wall with my name on it. I have to live with myself every day. And sometimes I think that the greatest joy I get from them is them knowing that I'm real, that I'm gonna and sometimes they come in and I'm mad. This young lady that I told you about that had threatened to hurt herself, and when she got off the bus, I grabbed her arm and took her straight to my office, and I cried all over her, and I said, don't you ever, you can have access to me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I said to her, taking your life is off the table. It is not an option. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. And I said, because listen, I cannot live with something happening to you. So I really get like, I know it's different. I know it's not, I'm sure that anybody who watched me who's like some counseling guru would be like, oh Lord, but it's working. I'd like to say to some of them, how's it working for you? Because this works for us. It worked. I am so blessed. The other counselor I work with, Matthew, he taught at our school for 8 years. He's just a few years younger than me, and we make a great team. He is the calm when I am the storm. We meet with kids together, but you really have to have people who are committed to what they're doing, who don't care about the fact that they're not making any money. That's one of the things I.
Does it catch up? I hope it does. I hope we get her back.
She kept coming back.
Oh, there you are. Nope.
I think her approach is so powerful because it's so authentic, and she's, as my mom just said, she's crying over, the kids. Hey, Molly, you're back. Oh, wait, no sound.
Okay. How can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I just disappeared. Then I came back. It's that angel thing I got going on, girls.
Higher power.
Yeah, you needed a moment.
Somebody.
Well, someone on our team, I think Nicole once told me that whenever there's like technology things like that happen, it means like there's something from a higher power. So I don't know, maybe Jesse wanted to join our book club tonight.
You know what? That that could be true. Or maybe it's that Cody wants to say hi.
We all dogged on tonight. How cute.
Well, he hears me talking. He's been scratching at the door, and he doesn't like that because he thinks that he's supposed to sit in my lap. You know, he thinks he belongs here. And during the pandemic, he did. And so the kids loved that. If I like Zoom called some kid and my dog was on, they'd be like, hang on a second, Miss Hudgens, let me go get my dog.
Aw, that's the connection. I feel like that you're making that connection. And I love that you're so real and will use your own, you know, thought process and what you want to do than always being in, everyone always tries to put you in boxes and say, you know, you have to do this, you got to check off these boxes. And did you talk to them about this and do that? I think it's really, you know, you're really tapping into, you know, your power of helping others, you know, and everything. I always tell everybody I raised Alexis so differently. You know, I raised her as a single mom, and I was always having her be open to everything and anything. And everyone's like, you sure you should, you know, tell her about this, and you should open that up to her. And I'm like, you know what? It's real life. She knows what I'm going through. If I'm coming home and crying, she knows why I'm crying. And I think that's you. You're really using your real life, and these kids are seeing it, and that's why they're trusting you with what their emotions, their feelings, and going on to a different path because they trust in you and believe in what you're telling them.
Well, I hope so. I know, like I said earlier, I'm just really going through every day trying to do the best I can, and knowing that there's no perfect. You know, we live in a world where people would like for us to try to be, and everywhere, especially as women, everything we see, you know, focuses on the way you're dressed or the way you look. And when I look at some of these girls, I think about how, you know, I was pretty overweight in middle school, and I think about the struggle I had with that. And like you mentioned earlier, you know, so many of the things that happened to me in middle school, there is a kid will come in and sit down and start telling their situation, and I will go, now I know why that happened to me, because you were going to come in here today. So I tell kids that a lot. When they ask me, Ms. Hudgens, I don't understand, you know, why did I lose my dad? Because we've had 3 kids at school lose parents during the pandemic. And one of the things I have said to them is, I don't know why this happened, and it is a terrible thing, but I believe that at some point in your life, you're going to be somewhere, and a person is going to sit down beside you and start talking, and they're going to have lost their parent, and you're the only person who will understand that. So I try to teach the kids that things that you go through that are major trials and major tribulations, I do believe they're going to strengthen you, but I think they're also preparing you for something. And so that's, you know, every time we have a child lose a parent, we give them a statue of a knight. And I tell them, you know, this is kind of in honor of your mom or your dad. But I also say, this is to remind you that you're going to fight on. Like, you're still supposed to be here, and they're going to be with you. They're kind of the armor, but you're going to be the one who keeps moving on. And so I don't really understand how people have jobs where they don't work with kids, because I just think that we are investing in something that we may never see the dividends. You know, we've talked about this quote that we're going to paint at school about, we're planting seeds for trees under whose shade we hope to never sit. You know, we're planning for these kids to try to go out into society and become something. And we don't know what that's going to be, who they're going to save, who they're going to help, but we get to be a piece of that. And for me, every kid that ever applies at our school to be a teacher, if I'm on the hiring committee, I don't even want to see anybody else. Like, if they were one of our kids, we're taking them back. We're going to hire our own, because I know what's been invested in them, and I know what they're going to invest into other people. So working with kids is just special. And, you know, I don't know when we're going to run out of time, so I have to tell you all this too before we go, but I want to give you an update on the young man, because I know that I get asked about that a lot, and I know you probably want to know.
Yeah.
On the 4th anniversary of this incident, I got a phone call from a lady in our community, and she said, Molly, who was privy to the situation at school, who obviously knew about it, and she said, Molly, my family and I own a small business, a family business here in town. And which I knew that, but she told me, she said, we got a job application from this young man. And she said, we are considering hiring him, and I want to know what you think about that. And I started to cry, and I said to her, I said, I have prayed every single day that he would get a second chance. That is why it was so important to me that there be the anonymity piece. I did not want anybody to ever know who he was, because I wanted him to have that chance. And I felt like he could if people didn't know. And so, I said to her, yes, I think. She said, well, our business, we kind of take in people that have had a hard time, who've gone through some pretty struggling life experiences. We could try to make them a family here. And she said, we really think that this will be good for him. And so on the 4th anniversary of this incident, I got to give him a job referral, so I think about, so they hired him, and I waited, and I'm still waiting for him to reach out to me. He did reach out sort of through another person who came to me and told me that he would like to read the book, which you all know the last chapter is pretty much from him anyway. But I wrote in the cover of that book everything I ever wanted to say to him, and I told him, I will always be here for you. If you ever want to talk about this or anything, you know exactly where I am. I'm still in the same place I was time you came to me. But if you don't want to talk about this, I'll never reach out to you. I will not, force you a conversation that you may not want to have. And so I sent that off to him, and I've never heard anything back. But I feel like one day I'm going to have that opportunity. I may run into him in Walmart or the dollar store or something like that. I don't know, but that's okay if I don't. It may just be that God used me in his life for that one moment, but it's been very hard for me to completely let go of him. Our lives will forever be intertwined because of this. And so I know that he later left the job that he had for a better job where he had more money that's right down the road from this same job. So every single day, I know exactly where he is. And this job happens to be about a mile from my home. So he's very close by. So I feel like in some ways God has kept him here for a reason. And the beauty of it is not many people know who he is. But I found him on Facebook. I have not sent him a request, but I've checked and I have watched through the past couple of years that other kids that he went to school with, he is friends with on social media. The kids were so forgiving of this. And I still have a folder I carry back and forth every day to school. It's worn out, just a manila folder that has all these letters in it that they wrote to him when this happened. And my hope is that one day when I see him, however that happens, I'm going to give him that folder. I want to, give him those letters so that he can read what all they wrote. Because it was.
That's amazing. It is amazing.
That says something about that school.
And I hope that one day there will be a situation where I can tell this story. And when people ask me what happened to him, we can bring him on stage, let him tell her. That is what I would love, is for him to, because I think that so many people want to know how could we have found you? How could we have helped you? What could we, for our situation, he was new to our school. We just hadn't had time to know him very well. I think if he'd been there longer, we would have. And we would have also pieced together some of the things he was going through that we didn't know about initially. But I'm very proud of him. And so I try to still talk about him everywhere I go, so people will kind of know that he is progressing. I'm hoping he's going to continue taking college classes, and who knows, maybe one day he'll write his own book. I hope he does. I hope he tells this story. Because it's, there's so many things that I want to know still. So, but anyway, I wanted to give you all that update because I don't get to tell people, I don't tell people that very much, but in this kind of setting we can. So anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I did want to ask that question, but I also want to, of course, respect.
I usually say, go ahead, ask me. I know what you all want to know. What happened to the kid? Yeah. But we'll see. That's still a story that's unfolding, and I'm excited for him for the future. I really, he will be 21 in January. And so I think about, he still has his whole life ahead of him, and he never went to jail. We fought hard for that. And I'm so grateful that he got the help I think that he needed. I don't think it was easy and probably wasn't the best setting, just from what I have been told. I wish we had better facilities and people who are more knowledgeable for caring for kids, who've gone through something pretty traumatic. But he's alive, y'all. He's alive. And we are too. So God is good.
Yes.
He is
Yeah.
good.
Wow. I mean, I talk about forgiveness all the time, but to hear you talk, Molly, it's just amazing because it's so pure and just in all aspects, just wanting what's best for him and continuing to do that, and so generous of you. And I think I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, this is so not common that there's a reaction or a thoughtful response like yours. And if we could rise to the occasion, if we could get to where you are, if you could help us in some way do that. And when I say us, I mean us as a society, other counselors, other educators. If we could, I think you should write another book and talk about your approach, because what we're doing, I say we as in, all of the programs that you don't necessarily do, all the different hoops that you don't necessarily jump through. If we could more follow what you're doing that is working, that, the world has changed anyway.
Right.
And we're seemingly moving in the wrong direction. And so all those things, all those protocols, all those trainings, I mean, it's a different world now. Some of the things are the same, but some of them aren't. And I just think, I just want to thank you. I mean, I wrote I don't know if you're following the chat box, but I wrote, we should clone her, in response to other responses that said how amazing you are. You really are. I know you're amazing, but I mean, I'm just listening to you being blown away again.
Scarlett, you have to understand that the level of forgiveness that I had is nothing compared to yours. And when I look at you and I think so many people who have lost loved ones to homicide cannot find the forgiveness you have. And so you talk about people being genuine, girl, you're the one. And it's important that you keep telling Jesse's story. I mean, this is his story, but it's your story too. It's important that we keep doing that because, see, God is giving us an opportunity right now when the world is like this and everything seems to be hard and people are fighting about things that have never mattered before. And now they do. And
Right.
People need to know that somebody is not saying something for a soundbite or, for a quote for the back of something, or, I don't have any perfect sayings or any great insight. I think that if we really make a decision that we're going to put other people before ourselves and we're going to love them, then all the rest of it just kind of takes care of itself. It just does. And I'm not the greatest at that. There are times that I know that I stumble and I rely a lot on prayer and forgiveness. I have to ask forgiveness every day for something because every day I mess up something.
Me too. Me too. Multiple times a day.
But when you there is something very special about the way I have two boys. I cannot imagine losing one of them, but the way that you have been able to graciously, and nobody connected to any school shooting is talking about forgiveness of the shooter but you. And I still stand in awe of that. I think all the time, I wish that every one of those kids who had committed acts like this had felt like they could talk to somebody, that they could go in and say, because when I did this training that I wrote years ago, I used to say, I wish I had 5 minutes with Dylan Klebold from Columbine, just 5 minutes, because in my mind, I felt like nobody was able to recognize the symptoms of depression that were there, all the other things that were going on. And in my mind, it's like, could I have spotted it? I don't know, but I'd have tried. Like, I think there would have been something in that kid. Maybe he would have felt like he had a place to come and talk, and it may have taken a year to build that rapport, but could it have made a difference? And I think that's why it's so important to me we keep caseloads small for people who work in mental health. We have
Not 600.
Well, we have about 700 kids in our school, close to that, and there are only 2 of us, but that is all we do is deal with kids. And we keep a running list. It's like triage most of the time, but I just think at least I'm not, they don't have me doing administrative duties, like we are present. But when you immerse yourself fully in a school and in a place like I've been able to do at Sycamore, then you are able to learn about the community and learn about the kids, and you to recognize things that are uncommon for kids this age. And you can then try to make changes within your own school, if nothing else. And so many people are just always looking for like a better job or more money. And I always think if you could just go where you're planted, like, there's so many illustrations, we're with like Sycamore is our school, and the sycamore tree we have planted all around our building. And I think about how the roots aren't very deep, but they grow so tall. And I think about all the analogies you can use with what a tree does and what it means, and wanting people to have that chance to move forward. Because if we can, I said to Matthew, I just said this today, we were talking about how we were so overwhelmed, there's all stuff we had to work on, and I said, you know what, nobody's dead, nobody's dying. So as long as that's the case, we'll get through the rest of it. Like whatever it is, we'll hopefully get it.
Mhm.
But we lose perspective sometimes, and if everybody could forgive like you have, and everybody could have hope like I want them to, and they would all love people like Jesse did, then we can make a change. Don't think you're not. It may look small, but it's like, the story of the starfish that before, you can't save them all, but it's going to matter the ones you throw back. And that's where I get my cup filled the most, is when they come back and say, Miss Hudgens, this is something you said when you were my teacher in 8th grade, and it helped me. Or, those are the things that I keep copies of and try to remember, because still there's very hurtful people, and they're going to try, Scarlett, to tear you down. They have some of the most horrific things have been said to you all. You had to deal with so many difficulties, and I hope for every one of those you get 10,000 positives. The people who are trying to lift you up and know that this is a good fight. I say that everywhere I go, this is a good fight. I'll stay in school safety as long as I'm alive, because it's a good fight. And sometimes I tell the kids that I'm going to hold on to you. You are not going to sing. I'm going to hold on to you until you can hold on for yourself. And I'm not going to lose. The world can't take us both down. So I don't know.
And as my mom
Excellent.
said, when you were speaking, when you were saying that before, she was saying, and that's exactly what they want to hear. They need somebody to hear that. And that's amazing. And yeah, there is nothing more important than keeping kids safe in school. And the thing is, we can do it. And so, you and I will just continue until we don't need to do it anymore. And hopefully
and the reason people are going to listen is because they know we're telling the truth. It's, it's not the same quote that's been changed and rerouted and turned into something else, and people say it like it's something magnificent. It's just real. It's what's coming out, and people are attracted to that. They are.
So
they're attracted to truth.
They
and
are.
common sense. And yeah,
It's missing a lot in today's society. We don't have a lot of that. So that's something hard to come by. So people, I think, do appreciate it. I know I do.
I know. I do too. And you know what, Molly, we appreciate you so much. You're a shining star, and you're amazing. You know,
But you know what? It's only if I think about that, like I said before, I'm really not supposed to be here. So that's why I try every chance I get to give the Lord the glory and say he's the one who intervened. He's the one who saved Sycamore. And that's the reason why the book is called that. He just used me. I got to be a messenger. I got to be part of that. And when you can look back on something like that and realize the enormity of not the role you played, but what was going on behind the scenes and how God was preparing you and blessing you and still does, just like this tonight. I mean, what a way to fill my cup, girl. Like, going
same
into
with ours. Shreya wrote and said she's never put up this many hearts in a Zoom ever in her life.
well, good. Wear the button out.
Same here. Oh,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you so
Well,
much, Molly.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. I don't know that there will be any more books. I don't know. I guess I've learned to never say never, because I think some people would probably look at what I do and say, well, you don't really do a whole lot. And I would say, you're right, but I love them. And I say that to them. I tell every kid who leaves my office, honey, I love you. I say it to them every day, even if I don't even really know them that well. And that has been something through the years kids have come back to and said, you know, Miss Hudgens, nobody's ever really said that to me, or you said that to me and we know you mean it. You know, that's been pretty crucial. And so y'all keep fighting, keep staying in this game, because it's gonna matter. We won't know it in this life. We're not going to see all of that until later, but you know, there's an old hymn called Farther Along, and it says, farther along we'll know all about it, and farther along we'll understand why. And then it says, cheer up, my brother, rest in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by. And I think about that all the time. We're going to understand it one day, exactly why we played the roles we did. And I just hope that I can be a good token, a good chess piece. God will keep moving me. That's what I'm hoping for. So,
I mean, amen. Molly, we love you so much. Mwah. Thank you so much for giving us this precious time with you. You've been an inspiration. You've relit my fire. And I just thank you so much.
well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. And thank you all so much for reading this book. It means so much to me that you did. And please share it with somebody, give it away or pass it on. There's somebody who needs some hope, some inspiration, some something, and this book will make them think about a kid that maybe they can connect with or talk to or something. So keep passing it on. I think it will matter.
It will. We will do that. Thank you.
Soon, I hope at some point.
Absolutely. We will.
All right. Much love, girl. Thank
Thank
y'all.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.